Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I want to talk about Jack Doohan, Alpine's new rookie for 2025. There's been a lot of news the past week or so concerning Jack Doohan, the security of his F1 seat, despite the fact that he hasn't even started his full-time rookie F1 campaign yet. So today I want to take a look at his junior career, and I also want to take a little bit of time at the end, talk about the news from the past week, kind of put all of that information together. So starting off with some just quick facts about Jack Doohan. He's from Australia. His hometown is Gold Coast. He's 21 years of age. This past year, 2024, he was the reserve slash test driver for Alpine. And of course, he made his F1 debut at the season ending 2024 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And this year, he'll be driving for Alpine. Of course, his dad's quite famous. If you watch motorbikes, MotoGP, or what was the predecessor to it, I believe, in the 90s, his father, Mick Doohan, won several titles there, so very, very famous in motorsports circles already. Now, for Doohan, young Doohan, I should say, he started his single-seater career in 2018, member of the Red Bull Junior team, and he started out in British F4. Very, very young. He was 15 when he first started out. And, doing the research for this video, it's kind of interesting. In some ways, his junior career is similar to Gabriel Bortoletto's, but, definitely without the super high peaks that Bortoletto's later junior career would end up having. So that 2018 British F4 campaign, which was the only full-time campaign he did that year, he did do some races here and there in Italian and German F4 as well. But he comes fifth, 328 points, 3 wins out of 30 races, 12 podiums, but no pole positions. 3 teammates that year. Dennis Hauger, a pretty well-known driver in junior circles, decent driver, not quite F1 level, I would say. Patrick Pasma, a guy who's been racing in Formula Regional for quite a few years, not sure what he's doing recently, but, in the past, that's kind of the level he got to. And another driver, Sebastian Priaulx. So for Hauger, 4th, 329 points, Pasma, 6th, 315, and Priaulx, 7th, 275. So Doohan kind of fit in the middle of those 4 drivers. So again, good, but not excellent, I would say. Now, moving on to 2019, and Jack Doohan decided to race in Euro Formula Open. Now, for those of you who don't know, Euro Formula Open is a pretty low-level F3 level series. It's kind of stepping stone, I would say, between Formula 4 and Formula Regional. The cars are a little bit underpowered, but I would say they're probably not quite as unraceable as the Formula Regional cars are. The strength of the grid, the season that Doohan actually raced was actually quite strong, but in recent years it's generally been very, very weak in terms of the strength of the grids in this series. But that year again, racing for the same team he did in British F4, Double R, finished 11th, 79 points, no wins, 2 podiums, and no pole positions either. His teammate Linus Lindquist finished 5th in the championship with 144 points. So not the better of the two drivers in his team. And again, there's actually some interesting drivers who drove in this series. The series was won by Marino Sato, a guy who's been in Formula 2, not this past year, but years before that, and would actually turn out to be one of Doohan's teammates in F2. Interestingly as well, Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda both raced in the series, and both of them ended up finishing ahead of Doohan in that series. That winter, I believe, or the winter before, he decided to go to do Formula 3 Asia, which has kind of gone over several name changes the last couple years, and is now Formula Regional Middle East, and it's actually, pretty, widely, well-regarded winter series, in the sense that, quite a few drivers from Formula Regional, Formula 3, as well as, sometimes Formula 2, will drive in that series during the winter to help get super license points, just as like an extra practice as well during the winter months. Recent years, the grid's been pretty strong, but, the years that Doohan raced 2019 and the 2019-2020 years, not quite as good. The first year, that winner of 2018/19, Doohan finished 2nd. The winner of the championship, Ukyo Sasahara, Japanese driver, much older, much more experienced, who again, I think today races in Super Formula. But that second attempt at the can in F3 Asia 2019/2020, driving for HW Wave Race Lab, finishes second in the championship again. So again, close but no cigar. 229 points, 37 points behind eventual race championship winner Joey Alders. 5 wins out of 15 races, 10 podiums out of 15, and 4 pole positions out of 10 races. His teammate Pietro Fittipaldi, better known as the driver, I would say best known as the driver who replaced Roman Grosjean at Haas for the final 2 races of 2020, and also, as Haas reserve driver. And his teammate Fittipaldi fifth that year, 119 points. So the better of the 2 drivers there. So again, decent results there, but definitely not the strongest grid. Just looking here at the Wikipedia page. So again, second in the championship behind Alders, but you can see Nikita Mazepin finished 3rd, Jamie Chadwick 4th, Fittipaldi 5th, and then 6th was Yu Kanemaru, and even drivers like Alessio Deletta, one of the slowest drivers in F2 in recent years, 15th in the championship, but still able to score points. So not a great grid. So again, even though by today's standards, finishing second in that championship would be a pretty decent result, back then grid not as strong. So again, those second place finishes not quite as good. At this point, he's still backed by Red Bull, but his junior results, despite the fact that he's driving in lower level series, not your Formula Regional Europe, not Italian F4, German F4, which was still around at the time. He's racing in a little bit lower level series, but still not able to win those series. So I'd say after these 2 years, his results are okay, but not really anything that would suggest he would become an F1 driver. And those poor results would continue the following year in 2020. Makes a step up to international F3 so going kind of from Euro Formula Open to F3 is a pretty big jump. Racing for HWA Race Lab that year, a pretty awful year, finishes 26th. Now, of course, Formula 3, there's 10 teams, 3 drivers per team, so usually about 30 full-time drivers, so basically 5th worst driver in the series, which is pretty bad. No points, no wins, no podiums, no poles, of course. And his teammates that year, Jake Hughes, finished 7th in the championship, 111.5 points, and Enzo Fittipaldi, so raced the other Fittipaldi brother, who finished 15th with 27 points. So pretty disappointing season. At this point, you would say F1 hopes are pretty much toast. But he was still, loosely a part of the Red Bull Junior Academy, but he would lose kind of some of the Red Bull, the full Red Bull, benefits. As you can see, the following year he wouldn't have, the Red Bull sponsorship on his, race overalls and stuff. So, but 2021 was definitely a big turning point for Jack Doohan's junior career. Switches teams to Trident. And he actually ends up finishing 2nd in the championship, 205 points, 26 points off of eventual champion Dennis Hauger, 4 wins out of 20, 7 podiums out of 20, and 2 pole positions out of 7 races. His teammates that year, Clement Novalak, finishes 3rd with 147 points, and David Schumacher, the son of Ralph Schumacher, finished 11th with 55 points. So pretty good season, driving for a Trident, which is generally regarded as the 2nd best team in Formula 3. Recent years they've been very, very close with Prema. Some years it feels like that's because Prema's not chosen the best driver lineup. But, in this case, I would say, Doohan, Novalak, David Schumacher, not the strongest driver lineup either, I would say. But again, decent season, but at the end of the season, dropped by the Red Bull Junior program fully, and he was actually picked up by Alpine instead. A couple heat races, I think he did 6 races at the end of the season, driving in Formula 2, just because it was the year where there was different schedules, where each track only had one of Formula 3 or Formula 2 as a cost-saving measure. And so he was able to go and race the last 6 races of Formula 2. Makes a step up full-time for 2022, and I think a very, very solid season. Racing for Invicta Virtuosi, finishes 6th in the championship in his rookie season. His teammate Marino Sacco, the driver I mentioned before, who won the 2019 Euro Formula Open Championship, finished 22nd with 6 points. So shows a massive difference in career progression between the 2 drivers. For Doohan, 128 points, 2 sprint race wins, 1 feature race win, 4 podiums, in the sprint races, 2 podiums in feature races, and 3 pole positions out of 14. So really solid rookie season Formula 2 and really strong numbers in qualifying as well. His average pole gap, or I should say median pole gap, 0.215 seconds, which was second best overall in the series, only behind eventual champion Philippe Drugovich, and was the best rookie in qualifying in 2022. Sticks around with the same team, which has been rebranding to Invicta for 2023. Finishes third in the championship, 168 points. New teammate this year, Amaury Cordial, pretty weak driver. So again, his 2 full-time F2 campaigns, his teammates were quite poor. So he never had really a super solid teammate. But at the same time, you can't really, do much about that. You just have to do the best you can. His teammate finished 20th with only 8 points. But for doing 168 points, no sprint race wins, but 3 wins in feature races out of 13, so pretty decent there. 1 sprint race podium, but 4 podiums in the feature race, as well as 2 pole positions out of 13. Average pole gap, 0.217 seconds, second overall, so actually slightly worse than his rookie campaign. But the interesting thing for Doohan was that the first, I would say, 3 to 5 rounds of the season, performance was absolutely awful, and it turns out there was like a crack in his chassis or something. The car was absolutely awful. They fixed the car, and he was arguably the best performing driver for the rest of the season from there. And if he had been able to have that level of car from the beginning of the season, very good chance that he actually ends up winning that F2 season instead of Théo Pourchaire. So 2 really solid years in F2. And again, he becomes Alpine's test and reserve driver. There weren't really any options for F1 seats available at the time. They basically had signed Gasly the year before, and they had Ocon as well. But again, Ocon was out of a contract at the end of 2024, so it was always kind of seen as, a potential opportunity going into the season. Now, before I talk any further, I want to talk about some of the historical qualifying results from Formula 2. So these are the 10 best qualifiers in Formula 2 history, so going from 2017 onwards in terms of median pole gap. And that's basically, you just took all the qualifying sessions in a Formula 2 season, you just took the middle number. I find it's a lot more representative than taking the average, because you can have outliers which, massively shift things, one way or another, often, making the number much bigger than it otherwise would be. But it's really interesting to see that, looking at some of the drivers on this list, you have Leclerc and Piastri basically tied for first, as they took more than half of the pole positions. Then you have Callum Ilott in the second year, excellent season there from a qualifying perspective, less than a 10th, median pole gap of less than a 10th. Fourth and fifth, you have the 2 third-year champions, Pourchaire and Drugovich. Pretty similar numbers, just shy of a 0.2 of a second. And then you have a couple of rookies. You have Paul Aron, who again has kind of joined the Alpine stable as a reserve driver, whose median pole gap this year was again just shy of 0.2 of a second, so very impressive there. You have George Russell, multi-time F1 race winner in his rookie season, whose median pole gap 2.1 tenths. And then you actually have Jack Doohan there in 8th and 9th. So he shows up twice on this list. And if you look at just rookie seasons, he's ahead of, the only drivers who have had better qualifying statistics in terms of median pole gap in their rookie seasons are Leclerc, Piastri, and then Aron and Russell. So again, pretty elite company there in terms of just raw qualifying stats. And I think before he was confirmed as a driver for Alpine, I was, this was one of my big arguments why I thought he should get a chance, as his qualifying form in Formula 2 was so good, and his race performance, again, not bad either. But again, taking a look at, that one result from 2024, Alpine, of course, a pretty acrimonious end to their relationship with Esteban Ocon. He was let go at the end, basically before the end of 2024, and they drafted in Jack Doohan to race in the final race of the season at Abu Dhabi. Now, this is a track that, despite the fact that, it's his F1 debut, mid-season, no winter testing, this is a track where Doohan has a lot of experience in F1 cars. He did the postseason young driver test for Alpine in both 2023 and 22. He's done a bunch of private testing at this track as well. He's done a couple, I think, at least one free practice session as well. So again, this is almost a perfect track for Doohan to debut at, in terms of the fact that he in theory should know this track very, very well. Of course, qualified 20th, the gap to Gasly in qualifying, 5.57 tenths. I was just checking my notes from my video that I did for the qualifying review. After the first run in qualifying, he was about a tenth and a bit off of Gasly's time, which is pretty acceptable, but for whatever reason just wasn't able to improve his time on that final run in Q1. Now in the Grand Prix, it was a pretty quiet race. Finishes 15th, whereas his teammate Gasly finished in 7th. Doohan was the second last of the classified finishers, only finishing ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who was torpedoed by Bottas, and of course was carrying a load of damage after that. Finished 44.3 seconds behind his teammate Gasly, and again, which I think is a little bit big. But that being said, for your first ever Grand Prix, it's not the end of the world. Didn't crash, didn't bin it in his third corner like Nikita Mazepin did, of course. But a pretty unremarkable Grand Prix, I would say. Now, I put at the bottom of the slide there the gap between Albon and Colapinto just for reference. Colapinto, of course, made his mid-season debut at the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. I think qualifying gap was about a tenth of a second, I believe it was. And the gap in the race between the pair of them, 13.9 seconds. Much smaller than the gap between Doohan and Gasly. Of course, you can make the argument Monza's a much less technical circuit, and of course, as Nick DeVries showed in 2022, performances at that track are not entirely representative of how they will do, at more normal tracks. The reason I bring Colapinto into this is because of the news that came out last week that Alpine has signed Franco Colapinto to a multi-year deal, reported to be a 5-year deal with the team, to be the reserve driver. And, it's a bit odd in the sense that you wouldn't normally sign a driver to a 5-year deal just to be the reserve driver. So I think there's really indicates, and I think, major motorsports outlets have reported this as well. The race has reported is doomed. Our verdict as Alpine swoops for Colapinto. I know the race loves to use verdict in all their titles. Motorsport.com as well. Colapinto joins Alpine as F1 reserve driver for 2025, and then the subtitle reads, Colapinto joins Alpine after making his F1 debut with Williams in 2024, leaving the future of rookie Doohan in doubt. And I think, realistically, Colapinto had a very good rookie kind of debut half season. His times in qualifying, very, very impressive. Historically speaking, when you have a driver come in mid-season like that, their qualifying times are usually quite bad. Lawson last year, 2023, was 3/10 off of Tsunoda. But, for those special drivers, those, very, very talented drivers, they might not out-qualify their more experienced teammates in those kinds of situations, but they're often very close. 2007, Vettel was about a 10th off Liuzzi in qualifying. 2011, Ricciardo was about a 10th or so off of, again, funnily enough, Liuzzi, when he made his debut at HRT. And this year, at Williams, Colapinto about a tenth of a second off of Albon in terms of median qualifying gap, which again, very impressive, I think. And for Briatore, he's kind of known as a pretty cutthroat guy. He'll make decisions that he thinks is the best for that he thinks are best for the team, even if it might have some negative PR involved, even if it might not be the thing that a nice guy would do. This is a guy who famously picked up Michael Schumacher from Jordan and signed him for Benetton right away after his Belgian Grand Prix debut. This is a guy who fired Jenson Button after 2002 to bring Fernando Alonso in. So he obviously can identify talent. There's lots to be said about Crashgate and all of the things surrounding that, but it does feel like this is a similar type of situation where Briatore is willing to be extremely cutthroat. He clearly doesn't have a lot of faith in Doohan. The reports are that despite the fact that he's had so much testing with F1 cars, his times have not been that impressive. And in fact, after the Brazilian Grand Prix, they basically brought Pierre Gasly into Qatar to basically test him head to head against Doohan, to kind of get an idea of what his times were like against, their benchmarking Gasly. And I think that's kind of where things kind of started to, leak out that Alpine were interested in Colapinto. Colapinto, obviously, massive following in Argentina and, elsewhere in the world. And also, he also does bring, quite a bit of sponsorship money as well. If the situations were reversed with sponsorship money, if, Doohan was the one with the sponsorship money and Colapinto wasn't, I highly doubt we would be in this situation. I think Doohan would almost certainly get the full year, no questions asked, and Colapinto would almost certainly have to wait until 2026 at earliest, if at then. So again, this is, I think, a situation that we're going to kind of have to wait and see how it evolves over the coming months and the early races. For sure, there's going to be a ton of pressure on Doohan right from the get-go. If the rumors are true that he only has a 5-race contract, he's going to have to perform right away. I would say be within, a tenth of a half in qualifying to Gasly, which I think is very, very, very high order. Looking at Gasly's times against Tsunoda, his first 2 years as a rookie, the first year was about 5 tenths, the second year was about 2.5 tenths, I would say, close to 2 tenths. And so I think, if Doohan was given the full season, I would expect that qualifying gap to be somewhere in the middle between the two, so maybe, 3 tenths of a second. So again, I think very, very tall order, I think, on Doohan's part. Hopefully he can make the most of it, and if this ends up being it, 5 races, I think he can still hang his head high. He can say he was an F1 driver, and I think that will still open many opportunities for him in the wider motorsport world, whether that's world endurance racing, whether that's IndyCar, whether that's I know Formula E. I know people like to clown on it, but it is a pretty high level series, globally speaking. So there you go. There's my look at Jack Doohan's road to F1. Looking at his junior career, talking a little bit about the news that came out last week and kind of the context of it, what it means for him. And yeah, I think it's tough being in that situation, but if he's going to have to prove to Alpine, to Flavio Briatore, that he's the right man for the job. And that's all he can do is worry about himself and not worry about Colapinto or anything else. So there you go. That's all for this video, kind of discussing Doohan's. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.